Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. Today we have a special holiday program. And so Jennifer Vinzons is one of the youth services librarians at Kapolei Public Library. And she says that her favorite part of collection development is being able to purchase graphic novels and manga for children and teens at her branch because she loves reading them herself. And I also know that Jennifer is an artist librarian and very crafty herself. We're so happy that she's agreed to spend part of her day showing us how to create some neat book wreaths out of book pages. So you can see that her camera is all set up and ready to go. So Jennifer, if you're ready, I'll just pass it along to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jessica. Hi,
Uh-huh.
everybody. I'm really happy to be here because my undergrad was actually in studio art, and I've done arts and crafts since I was a kid. So this is right up my alley. So I was very happy when Next Steps approached me and asked to do this program. So we're going to be doing several different crafts that you can make out of old book pages. So, we work at libraries, and a lot of times we have damaged books that due to like water damage or things like that, we can't give to our friends group to sell or anything, or they can't be repaired. And so this is a great way to give those books a second life and recycle them instead of just throwing them away. And so all you need is an old book like that, or you can get one from a thrift store or something like that. And then you'll just tear the pages out. So I have one already prepared. The first thing I'm going to show um, you guys is a garland, which I think is super fun because it's kind of play on your traditional like paper ring garland that kind of goes like that. So what you want to do is cut your book pages into like I think 1 inch strips are good. You could also do half inch or experiment with different page width. And then so I'm gonna just cut this really quick. I'm using a paper cutter, but if you have like, you can just use like, let me see, like if you have a ruler and scissors and a pencil to mark, however you want to do it, you just want to cut paper strips. And this is actually a pretty easy craft that um, even younger kids could do. We had I think we did this as a family craft, and so um, I'll just give a sneak peek. Um, instead of doing paper loops like you normally would, for a paper chain, we're gonna glue the ends like this so that kind of makes a teardrop shape. And so this is a great all ages craft, but it looks a little bit more fancier uh, than your traditional paper chain. And so all I'm gonna do is just put some glue on the end. I'm using a glue stick. Um, you could use a stapler too, or double stick tape, whatever you have. I think the glue stick works. As long as you have like a good glue stick. This is my favorite brand. And so after you glue them together, you can also experiment by maybe gluing a longer segment of it like this. And that way you get this kind of like longer shape like that. Or just putting like a little bit of glue on the end, or even just, you don't even have to match the ends. You can kind of just go like that. And then once you have a bunch of these teardrop shapes made, I'll just bring a bunch down here. You can glue them together. And so I usually kind of, I like starting with like one of these skinny shapes, but however you want to do it. And then basically all you're gonna do is kind of glue them together. So you can kind of place them if you want first, or you can just get started gluing. So I'll kind of start like this. And then I like working on like a table or a flat surface so that I can make sure my um, garland kind of stays even because it's you're using the flat of the table to keep everything straight, but you don't have to. And so if you're making like a garland to hang as decor, things like that, I definitely recommend the inch strip and cutting it length and cutting the page um, lengthwise. But you can also do it this way horizontally as well. That'll give you like some of these smaller shapes, and sometimes these are good to kind of glue and stick in like that. Some extra parts, but let me add some length here really quick. And so again, super simple. We had even like preschoolers um, do this at the library. Adults and older kids um, were able to make their own as well. So it's kind of a really great all ages craft, and it looks pretty cool and fancy. And you can even make them like, you can make little like branch off like that. And then you can keep going until it's as long as you like. I have this one here I did with 1/2 inch strips, so it's a little bit thinner. It's a little bit more delicate because um, the paper is thinner, but that's also is a very cute look as well. So let's see if if there are no questions, I'll move on to our paper wreaths because I have several different versions of those. Oh, thank you, Erica. Yeah, and I think we did this for Earth Day last year as a program, a library program, but and it's kind of like these organic kind of vine shapes or floral kind of like leaf shape. So it'll work for all different kinds of holidays or occasions. All right. So let me see. So we're gonna be doing wreaths out of book pages, and the first thing you're gonna need is some a base for your wreath. And so what I like to use is I like to grab cardboard, like it could be an old cardboard box, or pro tip I got from a cosplayer on Maui is, when you go to Sam's Club or Costco, they have all of the um, products on pallets and things like that. And sometimes when you're walking down the aisle, you'll notice they'll have like big sheets of cardboard. And so some of them are like a thinner uh, like paper, but some of them are actually like corrugated cardboard, and they're big, like 3 by 4 feet sheets of cardboard. And so if you find one where they're kind of maybe there's only like a few um, like jugs of pasta sauce or something left and you can see the cardboard kind of thing, like you can pull it out. And I've never had any staff people say that I couldn't take it kind of thing. So that's a great way to get some like nice large flat pieces of cardboard if you ever need. So but if you have any like boxes at home or anything like that, you can use that. I just use a dinner plate. This one is, I want to say around 10 inches, but all you do is grab like a pen or a pencil, trace around it, cut it out, and then um, I used the smaller like salad dessert plate, and I don't, I usually just eyeball it like with my fingers and make sure it's kind of pretty much centered. But if you want to use a ruler and make it perfect, you can do that too. And then I trace it again, cut it out, and then you can use this circle if you want to make like a smaller wreath. You can cut the center out of that and use that as well, or just recycle it. All right. So then you'll have your cardboard ring. And then what I like to do is I kind of will, um, because I have this gridded mat, I can center. Um, I just use the grid marks to be like, okay, this is sort of centered. And then I will make marks with a pencil just as a guideline. You don't have to do it, but sometimes it helps as we're going along. The first one we're gonna make is a wreath that kind of looks like this. And so these are made with paper cones. And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a sheet of paper. Okay. And then I usually will use this corner or this corner because it has a straighter edge. But you're just gonna like loop it into a cone shape here. And then I just add a little bit of hot glue at the end because it'll dry super quick and you don't have to hold it. You don't have to wait for the glue to dry. And then sometimes I'll take my scissors so that on the inside so that I can press down and make sure the glue sticks well. Right, and so you're gonna make a bunch of these cones. I've also seen people use a stapler. So instead of using the hot glue, they'll use a staple. I've also seen people use like white glue or things like that, but then you do need to have a way to hold it until it dries. You could probably use stick glue as well if you wanted. You could experiment with that. But I like using the hot glue because it's super fast. So you're gonna make a bunch of cones like this. And then when we bring our wreath base over here, usually what I will do is I will cut like a length of twine, and you can either tie a knot like this as your hanger and then just glue around there. But because these are made out of paper, it's pretty light. So if you want to just tie a knot like this and then hot glue it to the back, you can do that too. So I always will start with those lines I made, and then I'll stick one cone there. And so for each like north, west, east, south, I'll put 4 cones around there, and then I'll fill in the center. So you grab the rest of the cones I have here. And so since I'm just demoing it, I'm gonna just use this quadrant here. And so for each quadrant, I will kind of straighten these, and then I usually make the tip in the center. That. And so depending on the size of your base, it might vary how much cones you need. So for this one, it looks like looks like we have 5 here that are in the center of um, our little quadrant here. And so after you have it here, you'll notice that you're not gluing them like this. There is some space between the tips just because of how the cones are shaped. So that's why I like to place them all at least per quadrant before I start gluing. But once we do that, then I can just kind of like move it out of the way, put a strip of glue down, and then press it there. And then if you're using a hot glue gun, it is super fast to just lay them all out like so. All right. And so that's the first layer done. And then usually what I'll do is um, I'll go around and every other, for the first round at least, every other cone, I'll put one here and then I'll skip between here, skip that space, and then I'll put one and then all the way around. So that'll make a second layer. And then I'll try and see if I can squeeze one in between here. Just make one more cone really quickly. So sometimes they'll kind of just rest above like that. And then for the third layer, I'm going to bring my full one down here. So for this third layer, what you do is you'll take the cone and you'll sort of, you'll flatten a little bit of the tip and then you'll place it around. And then so you can see over here, the first layer, this is the second layer, and then this last third layer. And so it will look like that once you place it. And then what we do is with that extra bit, we kind of fold it, and then when we turn on the back, you can see I hot glued that extra tip right over here. And that way you're covering up all of the cardboard, and you just see on the front, you just see this nice clear paper edge there. And over here, you can also see the hanger I have. So this one's kind of, up a little bit, see the whole thing. Yeah. And you can also make like a huge one. Let's see. This one, I actually also used to make, I would say about an hour, but I think I kind of got a little bit faster at doing them later. I made a bunch of these, and instead of hanging it on the wall, we used them as a centerpiece for one of our for the HLA conference a few years ago, or the social night. And so we used these, we just stuck them on the table as a centerpiece, and you could decorate inside, you could add stuff or things like that. So we had to make like 12 or 13 of them for all the different tables. And so we got pretty fast at making making them, but it's also nice, like you could just make a bunch of cones in advance. This one, I believe I used 60 cones or 60 pages. But again, it's going to depend on the size of the wreath you're making, and you can kind of, I usually will do at least 3 layers, but if you wanted to, you could keep going, and you could even completely fill the center so it looks like a flower. If you want to do that, and that looks really pretty when you hang it as well. So lots of different things you could do with this. You can also experiment with when you're making your cone, like if it's like super wide like that versus like if you curl it a little bit more and have a skinnier cone, that's going to give you a different look as well. You could even mix the sizes of the cones you're using. So there's a lot of different ways you can make do different variants, or if you have different book pages, like you use different books, sometimes the paper color is a little bit different or things like that. So lots of different ways to make it unique or make it your own. Did anyone have any other questions for the I call it that one like the flower wreath.
Jennifer, do you just recommend using regular book pages, or have you experimented with using magazines or other types of paper?
Oh, I personally haven't, but I've seen online people use like old magazines, like because you'll get glossy and like color and stuff like that. I did use a travel book once, and that kind of turned out cool because um, there was a lot of blue in the text that they um, they had, and they also had like maps with blue and gray and stuff like that. So you can definitely, I've also seen people online use sheet music. So if you have like a musical lover or if you love music and you have like an old or damaged songbook, that would be cute too. Um, yeah, so you could definitely experiment and things, see what you come up with. Let me see. The next one we're gonna be doing is this scroll. I call this the squirrel one, the squirrel wreath. This one's pretty easy as well. Just put that out of the way for a second. So you're gonna take your book page and then you're gonna take, like I have two markers here. And so if you want, you can kind of be exact, but you're gonna roll about halfway up. These pages are about 8 inches long, so roll up about 4 inches, but it's not exact science or anything at all. So I just use the marker and kind of roll that side. And then this part's kind of tricky sometimes to get the second one started, but you don't have to make it super tight as long as it's as long um, as long as you're making that kind of scroll shape. And you can also, once you have it, you can you can kind of shift it too so that there's like a lot of text showing, or if there's a certain text that you want, you can do that. And then you're gonna carefully unroll it just a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna put a little bit of hot glue over here. You don't want to put it in the center, but you want it to be where the two scrolls meet. That way it'll glue together. So, and then it's important to hold it until the glue sets. So that's about like 10-15 seconds. Because if you move your hand too early and the glue is still wet, it will naturally want to unroll. And so just make sure you hold it and make sure that the glue sets. So again, about 10-15 seconds. And then after that happens, you can just slide them out and you've got this shape here. And so you're gonna make a bunch of those. I thought the person who did this was really smart because instead of doing you instead of using like one page and just um, rolling it all up to for your paper tube, they were like they can get two from one page. All right, so once you have that, I'm gonna go back to my demo wreath here, and again, just like the cones, what I would do is put glue a scroll on all four cardinal points, so like north, south, east, west, just so that's even, and then you can line up your scrolls in between and see how many fit. So usually, and you can, if you wanted to, you could probably play around with how like if you have a larger ring, you could actually glue it in the center. To me, with the ring I have, I feel like that's too small of a wreath, so I end up having to use the whole like gluing it to the tip type of thing over there. But we'll pretend that's a squirrel and close here. And you also notice the scrolls aren't perfect. You don't have to unless you really want it to be like perfectly straight. I think it gives it a little bit more character and variety. So and then you'll glue the flat side so that the double scroll is on the front here. And so I'll just see. And then you can decide if you want that torn edge on the outside or the inside, or if you don't care. I don't usually always pay attention to that. So however you want to do it, if you want to make sure all the text is the same way, you can do that too, but definitely not required or anything that. So it looks like we can fit about 4 in between the quadrants. And then so once I have that, I just kind of place it. And you do want to kind of make sure you're covering the cardboard, the inner cardboard, if that's something that you care about having a really nice edge. Um, and so you have that there. And then for the second layer, you just kind of place it in between to cover those last cardboard gaps, like so. And then after you glue everything, let me pull out my sample. It will look something like this. And then you can put another layer on. You can put as many layers on as you want if you want it like all completely covered, like a nice ring shape. This one also has the hanger on the back, but you can also glue that on afterwards. Some people also will do like they put like extra scrolls on like that if you want. This one is a fun wreath you could also decorate. So if you have like artificial flowers or something like that, you could like add those, or if you have like ribbon or things like that. I saw someone do this with like a Halloween theme, so they cut out like black paper bats and stuff. So this one is another one that you could do for Christmas, you could do for other holidays as well, kind of thing. So you could do something like that. And then for this one, I ended up using 32 scrolls, so 32 pages of paper. And then, of course, depending on what you're using, you could use dowels or anything. I like a little bit of a chunkier look. That way you don't have to roll so many pieces of paper. But if you do something like, I also have like a pencil. And so I like doing it from an angle because then you get this nice kind of like pointed shape, kind of like the cones kind of thing. So you can like roll it like that. And then I always make sure the pencil comes out before I hot glue the tip. You could do something similar with these like pencil tubes, and that one you could even add it to this actually if you wanted some variety. But if you did a whole wreath like that, I didn't have time to make a sample, but it's the same concept. I've seen people do magazine versions with this long one, so that's also a cool effect if you want to try that. Did anyone have questions about the scroll wreath? If not, I will move on to my last wreath that I have. Let me see. All right. So the last one is, oh, yeah. So this is, let back here. This is my scroll wreath, like that. And then again, if you want, some people like gluing like extra scrolls on like that, or if you even want to do another layer, you can do that. You can place them differently as well if you want it more freeform. And then you can always add other decorations too, like ribbons or flowers or things like that.
Jennifer, we have a question about how long did it take for you to make the scroll wreath?
I think that one was about an hour as well the first time I did it. Because you do have to, that includes like rolling all the stuff. They're prepping all the book pages is very good, like if you're like watching a show or something, you can just work on gluing type of thing. So but if you want to just like sit down and focus and do it all, you can do it a lot quicker too. But I would say about an hour. This one took me. Yeah. Were there any other questions for the scroll ring? Oh yeah, and then for this one, you could also, instead of using hot glue to fasten the scroll together, you could also use, like, if you have a tiny piece of double stick tape or something like that, you can use that as well. And that way you don't have to wait for the glue to dry. Okay. All right, and then if there aren't any more questions for the scroll wreath, I will do our next one here. So this one is medallions. And so if you've done the dollar billets, it's sort of a similar concept. So for this one, again, we're gonna take a piece of the book page, and then you can measure it if you want, but what I like to do, because it's faster, is just fold it in half, and then fold it in half again, because we want to divide this into 4 equal pieces. So if you want to measure, you can do that, or use a paper cutter. I'm just going to use my scissors and cut on the line here. All right, and so you should have 4 pieces of paper, and then what you're going to do is we are going to accordion fold back and forth. And so this one I'm doing, it's about 1/4 of an inch, but however, it doesn't have to be exact or anything like that. So I find it easiest once I started to use the table, and then just go back and forth like that. But I'm going to try and bring it up here so you guys can see. So you're just folding the paper back and forth like a zigzag pattern. And then you do want to try and keep, I try to keep the page edge straight for at least the pieces that came from the top and the bottom are definitely like, this edge is the straight edge from the book. So something like that. So you'll do that with all 4 pieces. And then again, I find it easier to fold it against the table, but I feel like I can fold it faster that way. But you don't really have, you don't have to be super precise for all of this. Close enough is good enough. And then you'll notice like my paper ends aren't um, totally equal as well. There's that torn edge. I don't usually cut it off. You could if it bothers you. But once we have all of these strips, oh, and I totally forgot, you could actually fold 2 at a time if you stack them on each other, instead of like single folding it like this. If you wanted, that can speed it up a little bit. We're gonna go back to our glue stick. And then what we're going to do is we're gonna make this one long strip of paper. So we're gonna attach them. So I'm gonna put some glue over here. Hopefully the camera is focusing okay. All right, and then just like that. And sometimes you'll notice that it's not perfectly straight. So in that case, I usually will just pick, I'll either try to like center it, or I will try and keep one edge straight. And usually it's the side that I want as the outside, what I want as the outside medallion, but even if it's off a little, you can't usually tell too much. Oops. All right, and then so like for this one, this was the torn edge. Sometimes I'll fold it so that it's flat and then just glue. You can see sometimes if it overlaps a lot, you might want to trim it. I don't usually, but if you want to, you can. I just usually make sure, usually because of the margins of the book, it's going to be like that white blank space anyway, so I don't usually worry about that. Okay. All right. And then especially for like the top and bottom of the pages, I like to have more text on the outside of the medallion. So sometimes I'll turn them so that if this is going to be my outside, that way I have more text on the outside. But you can do it however you want, and then sometimes how they connect will be a certain way as well, or sometimes I will just put it over an extra, glue it an extra segment over so that it's how I want it. But
Jennifer, your close-ups are coming in great. So
okay,
you can see really well.
awesome. All right. Okay, so now that you have your strip, what you're gonna do is we're gonna connect the ends. And so when we do that, you're going to want to make sure you don't twist it. So one way I do it is like make sure it's a complete circle like that, no twisting. And then I can put glue on it here. And so you see this edge over here is the torn edge. So it's not perfectly straight, but it will still work. I put some glue on it and I'm putting it in here too. Because this other strip is the same with that 1/4 inch. So it'll totally be fine. And then I just press this. Okay. And so when I'm looking at it, I see this top part here is the one that is the side that has the most text. So I want this on the outside. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure whatever side I want to be the outside of the medallion, I'm going to put on the bottom, touching the table. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of slowly flatten it. So you kind of have to start it a little bit. The accordion pleats should help you. And then you just kind of try to bring it down to the ground, the table over here. And so you can see it's going to make this medallion shape. And so this is the side I want as my front, because sometimes when you're gluing the strip together, the backside is a little bit of messier. So what you do is you carefully, I hold the center, that helps a lot. And so I'm gonna flip it over and you can see how like this backside is a little bit more rough, or there's these little tips sticking out. So that's why I definitely want this on the back. This is the side I'm gonna put the glue on. And so you do have to kind of hold it. If not, it'll spring out. But you do want to open it a little bit here. And then better. And then I am going to put some glue in the center and then also on the tips. And then we're gonna just smush it together and then hold it until the glue sets. So this again is gonna be about, for this one I usually leave it like 15 or 20 seconds because you really wanna make sure that the glue sets, because if the glue is wet, it's gonna naturally like spring out. So just hold it until the glue sets. Sometimes I use the back of my nail when I'm not patient to check or to spread the glue over. I'm using a low temp glue gun. I've also used, so I don't mind like touching it once it's a little bit cool. But definitely if you're working with kids or something, you definitely want to make sure that they are more careful than I am. All right, that seems pretty solid. And then you flip it over and you have your medallion. So you're going to make a bunch of those. This one you don't need as much. But of course it depends on the size of your wreath base and how big your book pages are. So I'm gonna bring this one up here. And so for this one, I kind of took a look at how, let me grab my test one over here. So for this one, I kind of was testing how much space I want. So if you want, you can butt them up like this and glue it, or you usually do have to have you do need a second layer if you want to cover up all the cardboard. You could also, I forgot to mention, you could decoupage the cardboard with some like book page strips or stuff like that if you just to make sure that no cardboard shows, or if you want, so if this was all decoupage with book pages, you could kind of leave more gaps and that would be fine. Of course, if you don't mind the cardboard showing, you can do it however you want. So I kind of was placing it and seeing how much space I wanted to put. And then this one I'm putting a second layer on. And then, so for this one, I used five of these medallions on the first layer. And as you can see, I left some spaces because I'm gonna put a second layer. And then you can also note, you can experiment how you place it on the cardboard. You can match it perfectly in the center, or these I kind of put, this one's a little bit closer to the center and this one a little bit more out just for some movement and interest. And so you can I could make this one all the way down. Bye, Sunny, thanks for coming. You can make it more down because this is still covering the cardboard. Or I can move it higher up. And so the rest of it's just kind of placing it and seeing how you like the arrangement you like. And then once you decide on that, you can glue them down. So I actually probably need one more pinwheel, one more medallion to go here. Or again, like if we have, like maybe I put a ribbon bow or something over there. And for these, you can leave it plain, or I've seen people take some like buttons and then glue them on the center, and that kind of really makes them look more like flowers. So I have a couple buttons, can go like that. And then this is another one that, again, you can decorate it for any holiday or occasion. We could do something like that. Or different colors. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. Yeah, so that actually is the last one I have, since I didn't finish making the pencil one. So if anyone has any questions or anything. Did you guys have a favorite wreath design? Oh, and then for this one, each medallion is 1 page. So this one only takes, like, depending on how many medallions. So this one, I believe I have, I would need another one, right? I would want to put another one here. So this one will say it was 10 pages. So yeah. And they're all pretty simple, that if you wanted to do like as a family with kids or things like that, or do as a library program, because everything is, unless, depending on how you're decorating it, the basic supplies like the book pages and cardboard, it's pretty low, no cost or recycling. So yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I can't really see the chat right now, but I'm sure Gwen or Jessica will let us know if there's any questions.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody, oh, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Lots of great compliments coming in. Yeah, everyone's saying they're really pretty and beautiful. Do you have any like favorite crafting websites that you tend to follow, or Pinterest pages or anything? How do you get ideas for things like this?
I usually just do like a Google image search or things like that. So if you look up book page wreaths, or book page garlands, or book page crafts, depending on what you're looking for, um, you'll get tons of different results and things you can at look for. And a lot of the people who post the pictures are also posting tutorials, so you can just follow along with those. Yeah, tons of different book page crafts and things you can do. And so usually if there's something specific, like you want to learn how to make a wreath with book pages or something like that, you can Google it and see if somebody's already done it. I've also done like I've done book page flowers, and so this also would be really cute if you wanted to like decorate it with a couple flowers too. And these instructions are all online for stuff like that. So there's tons of different things. People are super creative. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, those are all great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mhm. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up. Thank you, everyone. We all feel inspired now and a little bit more in the season of things. And it was very relaxing, at least for me, Jennifer. I'm sure everyone will agree. Watching you create these beautiful things. And you inspire us to go get our hot glue gun. Um, yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
everyone. Well, thank you for your time. We will be having a next step session in January, so stay tuned for an announcement about that. And ooh, wow, that's cool, Jennifer. Yeah, you've
I
got
just
all kinds of neat
showed
things.
it. I made an ornament with it too. If you stack those medallions, if you stack them, make different sizes. So the center one would be like the largest, and then you cut each one a little bit shorter. It'll sort of make like an ornament shape, and then you just hot
That's
glue it all
cool.
together. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
lots
that's
of different
great.
things you can do. Lots of ideas online.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jennifer. This was absolutely fabulous and like Jessica said, inspiring. So we're all gonna run out there with our paper cutters and start gluing and but thank you so much.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Happy Christmas and Merry Holidays.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Take care and happy holidays. Erica said she's heading